And when you start to And when you learn the rumba, somebody wants to do rock and roll. And it's a real test of adaptability. And I want to just mention a few words on BL's behalf, because we were just talking about this a few minutes before we went live, that the scheduling is now becoming very complicated through the Moya School in the University of the Seven Rays, because of the demand, because of the interest. People are being shuffled around. And yes, there are going to be oversights and there are going to be issues, but I see that as the result of this forward motion or movement of the ageless wisdoms teachings, and a lot of the advanced teachings hitting the material plane through these Zoom meetings and other electronic highways. So no apologies accepted, BL, because you're doing great work and you're doing something I could not do. I would have so many people meeting at the same time, I would lose my official position in a matter of minutes. Well, excellent. I think what we should do is perhaps review a little bit about what we talked about at our last meeting. Remember, our last meeting was like a special interrupted flow of what we normally do to address what appeared to me, and I think everyone else would agree, crises that is taking place all over the planet. It has always been upended the world all through history. But since Shambhala and the 2025 conclave has begun, it really has brought in additional stimulation and additional crises. So just to review for a minute, because I'm going to ask those of you who have come early or at the right time, according to some of our notices, some feedback, how it worked for you. Would you like to add something to that? And we basically talked about avatars, about the need of divine intervention, and uh, and we applied it to current events, whether it was forest fires or burning industrial waste or tsunamis and earthquakes. They're all related on some level of an or another to change, to the change in people's thinking, and in some cases the lack of change in some people's thinking, and the new thought forms that the hierarchy is trying to present to us. And it's happening to the very planet. Its internal fires, the elementals that respond to the solar logos, is demand for growth and initiation and expansion. And this takes place through all the sacred planets and unsacred, all of humanity, all the kingdoms. So what I would like to do is to throw some of this free time, which is very rare, out to all of you, and see if there isn't something that you'd like to add, or something that you've seen or noticed that maybe was important to you and you'd like to share.
They seem to be speechless. Oh, there we go. We got a hand. Go ahead, please, Janet.
Hey, Duane.
Hi, Janet.
I wanted to thank you so much for doing that um, synthesis of current events with understandings. The one thing I didn't bring up was the two people that ended up committing suicide. If you looked at their history, they had a lot of problems in their personal lives and how important it is uh, to have relationships, good relationships. And I thought it was so sad once you followed the story through. I'm talking about the Las Vegas person and the one in Louisiana. Um, it's they got too far ahead of themselves, and then they used too much masculine energy at that point, and didn't see a way out other than to help their leader. So that was all I wanted to say. I just thank you because the whole discussion was just wonderful from everybody. But I noticed that nobody brought up that part of the current events that were on the mind. And on the first was the 1st and 6th of January. Seems like
Yes,
forever ago. So I thank
yes.
you again very much.
Well, thank you, Janet. I appreciate your comments. And we will do this again because it's really where the rubber meets the road, as the cliche goes. And if people are not integrated sufficiently, this new impact of shambolic energy can put them over the top. And your statement about community and uh, the group, because suicide or premature exit from this planet when you could have lived maybe biologically, psychically, emotionally, mentally longer is a loss. And when when we go more from competition to cooperation, we eventually arrive, as DK says, into a state of community where we are our brother's keepers. And their problems, maybe they're not our problems, but with our deeper connections and with our community spirit, with our optimism, we can help pull people back from the brink. And it's not just suicide. The world is full of people who have psychically, emotionally committed suicide. They've become so numb, and not because they don't care, often because they care too much. A lot of these new psychics that are coming in that are not finding their rightful place in their rightful group to go forward to the next level. And I think this is where we come in. A lot of what we do is just preparing a place for others that may be even as advanced as we are, or maybe more advanced, but may not have found it easy to integrate into a material world where there's a lot of crapola happening from every direction. And I remember when I was young, being a triple water sign, I used to say when I was old enough to sort of get outside of myself and see the world, I came to the conclusion very quickly, this is an insane place. How did I end up here? And even though I wasn't aware of the ageless wisdom teachings, something intuitively told me there's got to be something better. There's got to be a cleaner, a more truthful, a more lighted way. And that's exactly the path we're all on. And that's why we're here. Well, good. Any additional hands or comments anybody would
Yes,
like to make?
we have 2 hands and then we have a number of comments. So go ahead, please, Rose.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to note that if you think about the long evolution of humanity, that normally, you know, it's kind of slow. It's kind of like a plant growing that's very, very slow, and it takes hundreds, thousands, thousands of years. The conscious of humanity, and outside of the physical form, if you want to use the word, evolves. And there seems to be, with these Shambhala impacts that started happening, I think in 1425, when the hierarchy made a decision to start the externalization process, that there's just been such a speeding up and rapidity of energies that are causing these changes in consciousness that seem to be accelerating, especially in the last 125 years. And with that, if you take the history that it's, a slow process over thousands of years, and just the last 125 years, there's this massive acceleration that I think causes pain. It causes a difficulty of adjustment, because if your sensitivity of your instrument is used to a much lower pace, and now there's these energies coming in that are hitting the material form with a very powerful impact. And I think we are seeing that in society with some of the areas where it's a lot harder for that adjustment to catch up. And so I just wanted to mention that. That's all.
Excellent, Rose. And we have to understand that initiation is a process of burning off the old and the unwanted. And there's some discomfort associated with that. And one of the things that we have to be careful about is not buying into what I call one of the new age glamours, which is if you're making progress, that means all of your issues are falling away and you're going to move into a place of perfect peace. Yes, in the long term, that may be, but in the short term, there's going to be the discomfort of the spiritual fires as they overshadow and they descend into the 3 lower vehicles of the physical etheric, the emotional, and the lower mind. And they, by natural inclination, will resist. And that's why, in a way, you're really imposing with these spiritual fires of love and abstract intelligence and will. You're dealing with something new to the planet, new to groups, new to individual people. DK has a curious word that he shares in his teachings and is called the burning ground. And there are several interpretations of that, but the one that I'm focusing on right now is the sense of the dross being burnt off as you move towards your sun, your soul, your spiritual monad. And that's why people like Alice Bailey and H.P. Blavatsky were considered lions of God because they were ferocious. They faced adversity and they transmutated it and they rose above it. Any additional comments or hands?
Yes, please go ahead, BP.
Oh, sorry, my name is Barbara. Yes, so this week I heard a theosophist say that there's some evidence that the lower three levels of elementals on the creative hierarchy are going rogue. With,
I love those words.
because of the very strong thought forms that are have a magnetic compulsion, and some of it is around new power over issues, and others some suggested something with uh, some aspects of artificial intelligence. So it seems like it may be a time to strengthen the unity and wholeness of the creative hierarchy. And in our role on uh, the fourth kingdom, that our progress is toward the fifth kingdom and a closer relationship with the Davis. So it may be if we strengthen that relationship with the Davis of the fifth kingdom, that it could help to bring a new order to the elemental level.
Excellent. That is a wonderful share. I have written a book on this subject. It's called The Davis, and it can be found at my Lightweaver site. Michael or BL, could you insert that in the chat box? Because it goes into great detail exactly what you've shared. And the idea of burning is the result of higher Davic spiritual angelic force trying to make inroads into your emotions, your lower mind, and your physical etheric. And they operate under the law of sacrifice. And those superior beings, and by the way, the reappearance of the Christ is going to come with a hierarchy of angelic and Davic lives. Their purpose is to come down into our three lower vehicles and condition them and cause the atomic substance to become so much purer that they in turn are on the path of the angelic and Davic kingdom. And then the devas that overshadowed and overlighted those three elementals of your personality, they are released for even greater service. It's like a divine ecosystem. And Barbara, to address the idea of the three lower elementals going rogue, and I don't know which theosophist shared that, but I can absolutely attest to the truth of that. Right now, we have Shambhala coming from the Lord of the world, coming through our solar logos from the Great Bear, Ursa Major. And those are very powerful forces, and they will stimulate not only the first ray, but they'll stimulate all the other rays to a lesser degree. So if you could slink through life making subtle changes and be very contented and happy with where you are, is not going to work. You're going to have what John Lennon called instant karma. If you're not on the right track, something will go askew, and that will help you get back on track and realize this is not the same program as it was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. It's a new program. Now, in addition to the first ray pouring in, we also have the seventh ray. And the seventh ray works through the constellation of Draco. And that stimulates the seventh ray as it passes through our solar logos, through our planetary logos and all the other planets, sacred and non-sacred in our solar system, and it impacts humanity. And what does this draconian seventh ray energy do? For those who are coming up for the third initiation, and there may be those present right here in this group, it will help them because it will stimulate by natural inclination, not by forced breathing exercises, but by natural inclination, energies from the base of the spine up to the top of the head. This is where the eternal feminine really flowers and meets its consort, Shakti and Shiva in the highest head center or the crown. Okay, so if you're working on the second initiation and you're preparing for the third, this is your moment of opportunity that, according to the Tibetan, has not come for since the time of the Buddha, when the same seventh ray cycled in, and the Buddha helped our hearts coming up for the third and fourth initiation pass through that initiation. Not to say you can't do it on your own, but when opportunity, this is a direct quote by the Tibetan, when opportunity comes over the spiritual horizon, you must recognize it and seize it. So this is what Draco does to initiates first, second, and coming up for the third, or if going through the third, even potentially beyond that, to early discipleship. It will create crises in your life, and it will force you to confront karmic liabilities and situations and events that you may not remember, but they come from past lifetimes that you have to deal with. And believe it or not, the karmic laws of cause and effect are a sub-law of the soul, and the soul will dish out to you those karmic liabilities that you have to master to fully enter that lighted angelic angel we call the divine jiva or soul. And last but not least, and this gets back to your rogue idea, Barbara, those individuals who do not have an integrated personality, that seventh ray will impact them on the centers below the diaphragm, particularly the base of the spine and the sacral center. And that's why you see this unhealthy expression of sexual activity at this time historically, whether it's people being farmed out or being taken from one place or another for prostitution or all kinds of weird stuff. It's humanity, a certain level of humanity is not ready for these energies. So what it does, to go back to what Barbara said, it makes the three elementals, those lower elementals, go rogue, or what DK calls riotous behavior. So when you look out and you see all this pornography and all this stuff, it's the result of people often not responding properly to these higher energies. Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to comment as we move
Okay,
up to
yeah.
the 11?
Yes, we have, Michael, I see your hand, but let me read a couple of comments first. And for everybody who's recently joined us, we were supposed to start at 7, and some space cadet whose name rhymes with EL put alternate times on different announcements. So we've been having an open discussion between 6:30 and 7 p.m. GMT just to get us up to the time we're supposed to start in a minute. But okay, let me read a couple of comments. Joe says the Washington Post published in the last hour an explanation of Musk activity. Digital digitize government and use AI to make decisions as I see it. My view is this is an emphasis on the head and less on the heart and people. I'm glad to have any kind of playbill to understand what might be the explanation for all the chaos.
Yes, there's a lot of injustice taking place, and there's a lot of good taking place that comes with a lot of shattering of the old forms. And it's not always easy to tell when you're feeling discomfort or disorientated. It's not always easy to tell if that's just coming from you or our lack of understanding of the forces behind it. And I can give a simple example of that. I was born into a family where my older brothers were all very first ray and I was very second ray. And I used to say, you know, something's wrong here. God couldn't exist. This is like when I was like 8 or 9. I used to say God couldn't exist because he would never, 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 in his great compassion, put me in a family of all these, I'll call for lack of, and I love them all, for a better phrase, alpha males. You know, they all practiced karate and lifted weights, and they were these alpha males. And I was more like very retiring, you know, being a water sign. And it just never, I could never understand it. As I became older, I began to realize that their behind their rough exterior, because they used to pound on me quite a bit, there was something I had to learn, and it was the use of first ray force. And first ray force is a great asset if it's used with wisdom and love. If it's used for self-aggrandizement and evil, look at the world and look where we're at. So I just mentioned that in passing because do not be afraid of the discomfort of change. Suspend your disbelief. If you think things are supposed to be this way, but everything appears to be something different now, I'm not saying change your point of view. Suspend your disbelief, as Voltaire would say. And this is also what Socrates would say. Suspend your disbelief. Do more research. Look for many sources of information. Don't go by just the ones you're being fed here in the US. Seek out foreign insight. Okay, any additional comments? And this will be the last one because then we're going to start.
Okay, well, Michael still has his hand up, but I have one more comment in the chat. It says, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And this is apparently, okay, Ben is the one who typed this, and it's a quote from Ilya, somebody or other, I'm sorry, a Nobel Prize winner in 1977 in chemistry. So isn't that beautifully said?
Awesome. That is profound in its simplicity. Anybody can make something overly complicated, and I've been accused rightfully of doing that myself. It's the small gains that link the islands. And at the end of the chain of islands stands the group, stands the master, stands at the hierarchy. And each small island we traverse is connected to a slightly bigger one. And the distance between the islands is shorter and shallower. So thank you. Was that you, Ben, who made that comment? Or was that Mike?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it was
thank you.
Ben. All right, now it's time for you to start the true time. But Michael Crow still has his hand up, so
Okay, Mr. Crow, go.
Okay, hey. I really liked what Barbara just said about the lower elementals. And then tying it into the Washington Post, I think that the question was, what is what reasonings behind this chaos? And then that's what brings me to these two things that I wanted to say. One is based on what I've seen, how people have been responding to these crises. It's as if they feel the crisis and then they're fed a line, a narrative, and respond based on that narrative instead of analyzing causes. So most of these crises, Ukraine war, Middle East, all of these things, you would know exactly that they were going to happen if you were reaching out using an esoteric lens on the actual planet and studying the history, the geography, the karma, the energetics, everything like that. So something to put out there is that during these crises, we're going to be in this chaos where the lower elementals have gone rogue. They are going fast tracking the narratives, which again, this doji thing and this crisis in the United States with what Trump's doing again, it's they're attempting to shift it again back to the idea that, oh, let's point at these single individuals instead of pointing at the root corruption and the cesspool that is basically US politics, and have everyone go tribal while they do whatever they want. So that's basically the playbook consistently and has been ongoing since the first Trump situation, is that they've basically split people, bifurcated, and it's happened within our community so that instead of looking at the karma and the cause and creating unity from the energies that are trying to shatter the old, we're fighting about semantics that aren't even our own. They're narratives that have been given to us. We already have our own narratives. And so I think something to remember right now also is that there are people within the group dynamic that actually already see this stuff and they're trying to bring in new energies. And so on the periphery in your life, there are people who have unique thoughts, and maybe you think, oh, they're on the fringe, but maybe you should start thinking, well, how do we integrate the new consciously so there doesn't have to be destruction? Because if the new is not integrated consciously, there's going to be more death, more destruction, more chaos, and then maybe we won't even successfully shift over to a new paradigm in the optimal sense. It'll just be a lot of like fighting. And so that's what I wanted to
Excellent.
offer.
Excellent, Michael. Those are important insights. You know, pain is often the result of resistance. And if I've pointed out that there's going to be a certain discomfort going forward on the path of initiation, we have to weigh the difference between the discomfort of not changing versus the temporary the discomfort of changing. And, you know, it's a curious thing. Often the disciple thinks that they can't make the next level or grade, whatever they might like that to be, because they have these personality limitations or say flaws. And what I'm about to say is going to appear to fly right in the face of what I've said before, but what I'm about to share is very paradoxical, yet it's very true. And it's this: we often go through initiation not because we mastered all of our limitations and flaws, but because we got enough of them under control that we can go forward and pass through the portal of initiation. Because In many cases, we have to do the first half, but the other half that may seem unsurmountable, the soul will take care of. In other words, when you get to a certain point and the soul pours down through your three lower vehicles, stuff that you've been working on, not just for this lifetime, many lifetimes, will disappear through the power of attrition. And what do I mean by the power of attrition? Your focus is on the soul. It's not on your personality limitations, which often can strengthen and make them worse. Wow, isn't that a kick in the butt? The thinking principle has to be used to analyze where your issues are, where you need to work, but then when you start a new meditation, alignment, visualization, or program, you have to put that behind you and not focus on it. And the soul will do the rest. Okay, thank you. That was excellent, Michael. Okay, excellent. So we'll jump into our presentation now. And just keep in mind that this presentation was supposed to be the one that we had last week. But as I shared earlier, to me, things are happening so fast and the crises are so profound that it was good that I stopped, injected something in real time, and we will do that more because this is where the rubber meets the road, where we can take these esoteric teachings and apply them to everyday situations and social changes. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate everybody's patience for a little bit of time mix-up here. As I mentioned to our techie team, if it were up to me, we'd have 5 things going on at the same time, and then the rest of the time there'd be nothing. So thank God I'm not at the helm of the organization of these presentations. Okay, so it's basically, and I've been pointed out twice, so I'm twice guilty that I've expressed the new art. Expressed is spelled incorrectly. No, I'm not making a new word. It is spelled incorrectly. Thank you, Michael. And I will correct that. Okay, so moving along, let's see. Okay, my mouse, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to want to work. Oh, okay. Okay. We're in business now. So this is sort of where we left off. The main theme is how spiritual art, and I know how many of you out there are artists and creative people. And this is not just about making things with your hands, which is awesome. It's about making things with your emotions and your mind. And the new spiritual art expressed through the new Aquarian sciences. So what we're trying to do here is link new types of art forms with new types of teachings. It's really a 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, or if you want to shave it down, it's sort of a Ray 4, 5 series of presentations. And all of you and what you bring, even that out and make it richer and much more beautiful. Okay. So this is the first quote by DK that we're going to sort of expand on and try to understand first on a macrocosmic level, then on a microcosmic level. The one wheel turns. One turn alone is made, and every sphere and suns of all degrees follow its course. The night of time is lost in it, and kalpas measure less than a second in the little day of man. 10 million kalpas pass, and twice 10 million Brahmic cycles, and yet 1 hour of cosmic time is not completed. Within the wheel, forming that wheel, are all the lesser wheels from the first to the 10th dimension. These, in their cyclic turn, hold in their spheres of force other in lesser wheels, wheels within wheels, spheres within spheres. And I would add to that, as we're going to demonstrate, every sphere has a dual vortex where at the top of the sphere, at the northernmost point, energy enters, and at the southern, where it exits. Now, what we have just outlined by DK is largely seen here in this chart. And we're not going to go into this chart in great detail because most of you have seen this, and it would require a whole presentation on itself. But what DK is talking about, 10 dimensions, you can start down here with the average humanity, if you can see my little red arrow on my cursor down here, and then it's people who are undergoing early stages of discipleship, and then the different levels of initiation, and then the master's ashrams and all the different areas that they have chosen to work through. But note how they're all connected by these triangles of force. And remember, every one of these circles is a sphere with a dual vortex. That's how energy comes in. And we've talked about a triangle over and over, how a triangle is a vortex in its early stages of development. And when energy circulates around 3 points of a triangle at a faster and faster enough speed, you go multidimensional, and that is what creates the vacuum that pulls the energy down from the next higher level. We'll go into that in more detail. So here's my interpretation of that, only on a very, very simplified level, but dealing with light. Here's your rainbow bridge. The solar logos embodies, encapsulates all these other sacred planets. And they're all vortices. They're all wheels, as DK says. And even when you get to the subgroups, like this is 7, if you can see, it's not real clear, but this is the 7th ray, and that would be presided over by Master R. And yet within that group are 7 lesser groups. There's group 7-1, 7-2, all the way to 7-7. And it depends on your ray makeup. Let's say you have a 7th ray soul or a 7th ray personality. You will find yourself in one of these ashramic places. Okay, so the question is, and this is a reoccurring question, it's not new, but we're going to try to present some information, some visual insights that reinforce this question, the answer to this question. And that, of course, is how are occult wheels and their dual vortices created? Vortices in their different size and potencies are the result of 2 opposing forces coming together into the same vicinity. These 2 forces try to cancel each other out, much like a weather system of hot and dry and cold and wet. When meeting, they turn upon themselves. We live in a system of duality. So let's apply this to another visual image. Okay, I want you to imagine that all of your bodies are spherical. They have an inlet, the plus at the top, the negative at the bottom. And when you meditate, you create a sphere. When you meditate or align or pray or visualize, you are creating an entity on the inner planes. And that entity is spherical. Vortex in, vortex out. Now, because we're multidimensional beings, each vortex, say this is the physical etheric vortex, the astral, the mental, they have to have a way of cohering, of coming together, maintaining their individuality and separate identity, but still being a part of a greater entity. So when you meditate and you break through your etheric bubble / vortex sphere, you're now operating and can operate on the astral plane. And all of you watching this are doing this and have done this probably for many incarnations. So this is just a sort of a primitive recapitulation, but it's important. Then what's positive at one time, this would be like body consciousness. Then the next one would be like emotional consciousness, and the polarity shift. And then when you become mental, then the polarity shift again. And you maintain the gains, but you're always striving in meditation to create a stronger or more potent vortex, because the vortex, the swirling energy, creates the vacuum, just like a tornado. How can a tornado lift up huge buildings and toss them miles into the air? Because it has suction. You have to create suction between your vehicles. And if you have an integrated personality, that means you've already done this work. You may not be aware of these technicalities, but they're very important when you go to the next level. And you could say, well, this is like the first initiation. This is the second initiation. If you can follow my cursor, this is the third initiation. And to go from the third initiation to the higher causal monadic levels, you have to create an even more powerful vacuum. And it's the vacuum and the thread of your ray, the ray that you're projecting at out to the next higher level, that creates the vacuum that pulls energy down from the next level. It's all electrical. And yes, we use all these Asian and Oriental terms, and that's good. And that we wouldn't be here if we hadn't borrowed from all these Eastern religions and metaphysical systems. But the wonderful work they've done is going to be slightly reinterpreted here in the West around more scientific terms. It can't be a different energy, because energies energies. So keep this in mind, and it's probably a little better just visualized here. And let's just go to the 7 rays and the 7 planes. We live
Okay,
in a,
Duane,
go ahead. Yes,
sorry to interrupt.
no problem.
We can't see your cursor when you tell us that you're
Oh,
pointing to something.
oh,
And I think it may have to do with the way that you shared your screen, but I'm not the technical person, so
I'm going to try
and
my laser pointer in the future. I'm going to try my laser pointer because I have one. I didn't know you couldn't see my mouse. Thank you. My
Yes, the laser
little
will
arrow.
work, Dwayne. If you use the
Yeah,
laser, it will
I
work.
see it. I see it. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for letting me know. That's important. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the 7
and
rays.
sorry,
Go ahead.
one
Yeah,
more.
no,
Uh,
please.
Louise asked, could you please go back one slide for a moment?
Okay, and let's see if I can use my pointer. Okay, can anybody see the pointer? I can see it. It's a little red dot. It's floating around a white background. Can you see
Yes,
it, Rose?
we
Okay,
can see
thank
it.
you. Your etheric, first vortex, astral, second vortex, mental, third vortex, the causal body, the fourth vortex. They are like the skins of an onion. The outer one is very coarse. And as you go towards the center, they become more ethereal. We say that this is the real world. These are tangible forces. And that these other ones, these higher ones, well, they're not tangible. Well, they're not tangible because we haven't contacted them. They simply are light and sound, vibration, geometry, that's so ethereal unless you have trained to create the powerful vortex and the sensitivity that comes with that vortex, they're going to remain unknown. Okay, excellent. Okay, I still got my pointer. We're good. So what you have here, we live in what is called a dual system. And we have the spiritual and the material, and they come together through the consciousness principle, which is really the flowering of the Christ principle, where spirit is overshadowing matter, and it's being done through love. And you can see their polarities. The rays are positive to the planes, which are negative. And then even the subplanes, you'll see if you follow my little cursor here, my pointer, that the rays are positive, masculine, compared to the receptive or feminine of the 7 planes. But every ray alternates on a subplane. The first is positive, the second is feminine. The next is positive, the next is feminine. So it's a curious thing when you start talking about, well, this is a masculine.
Sorry. Can you shut the fuck up, you stupid, ugly bitch? Just shut the fuck up, fucking nigger.
Does
Shut the fuck
anybody
up, you
hear
dumb
that?
nigger. Shut the fuck up.
Does anybody hear what I hear?
Go kill yourself, Duane, you stupid nigger.
Yes, I'm
hacking your
hearing it
account right
too.
now, nigger.
Okay, does anybody know
I
who's
hate
giving us?
niggers. I hate niggers. I hate niggers.
Could somebody remove the static?
I'm trying. Just give me a
Okay.
minute here.
They're gone. I mean, they're shut
Thank you.
down. So the thing is that we're just gonna have to people will have to raise their hand to talk. So I'm gonna
Okay.
kick them
Let
out.
me
But
just ask this small technical question. Is this somebody who came into the group that just like randomly out of curiosity?
yeah,
Okay. Well, I always say interruptions are just a test of our determination and fortitude. So in spite of all the spicy language, let's go back to the real gold. 7 rays and the 7 planes. And I'm going to open this up to everybody in a few more slides, and we're going to get some feedback. Okay, so we have the rays on the left, we have the planes on the right, and we're given this information in a very linear way. The tabulations, the charts that the Tibetan and Blavatsky give, which are fabulous, and everything that you see here is built on their genius. However, I've just expanded it, made it a little more 3D, made it a little more colorful, and tried to the best of my ability to keep the accuracy. So the rays and the planes. Now notice how, see these little central dots right here? This is Fohat. This is the will of the Father. That is that spark of Shambhala, or the will aspect, that is veiled by all the rays and all the planes. But they are the impetus behind the creation of the rays and planes. So think of all these triangles as the lattice work, the handiwork of God's garment, and it gives you a whole different perspective. Now, here's a quote on the importance of color, and we've shared this before, but we're taking it one step further, as you'll see in the next slide. The use of colored lights. These lights are played on the body of the disciple and affect a shaking out process and a simultaneous stimulation of the atoms. So We discussed that earlier. We're trying to throw out the old and build in the new. And this can happen sequentially. It can happen simultaneously. This cannot be done till further information is given out on the rays. When a man's ray is known, stimulation will come from the use of his own color. A building in will be brought about by the use of his complementary color, and disintegration of unwanted matter will be brought about by the use of an antagonistic color. So once again, just because something feels a little uncomfortable may not necessarily mean it's a bad thing. What does DK mean here by an antagonistic color? Say you're a second ray type, and bright reds, oranges, uh, it's not like you don't like them. Maybe you shy away from them under certain conditions. Well, what DK is saying here, and he later explains, is that you can build in with certain colors, but you can drive out with other colors. And red is an antagonistic color to second ray types of people. And again, this is an oversimplification because most second rate people like all colors, but in the right relationship, the way they dress, the way they do their art, everything they do is orientated. This knowledge will later on be communicated to the great bodies that hold custody of the mysteries, the church and the Masons. Okay, so Michael, if you could be of assistance here, I would like you to take this picture, if you can, of the rays and put it in the chat so anybody who's interested can download it. And it simply is a circular chart. Most Bailey people are familiar with a linear chart. It's laid out like dinner plates, and that's good. It gives us insight, and we've worked with it for years. But as we move through these different teachings, I'm going to show how we must make our ray charts and our astrological charts three-dimensional and animated. And why is that so? Because the soul is three-dimensional, fourth-dimensional, fifth-dimensional. And if we can take something that's one or two or three-dimensional, make it fourth-dimensional, that's an extra step on the ascending ladder of initiation, especially with second-rate people, because second-rate people love to visualize. They excel at visualizing. So is it possible, Mike, for you to drop that in the chat box? Okay.
I think I could do that for you.
Thank you, BL. Yeah, Mike may be taking a break he well deserves, or a bathroom pause. We want to take this work into more of an experiential framework. And what we're doing here is giving you the tools to do that. In other words, you may not know what all your rays are, but when you download this black and white tabulation or graph, I want you to put beside it what you think your physical body ray may be, what your emotional ray may be, mental, personality, soul, and if so inclined, the monadic ray. And you know what? If you're not sure, it doesn't matter. Let your intuition sort of guide you. And I can tell you right now, the colors that you gravitate towards on a personality level, like if you like rose or lavender or, really unusual, bright, translucent colors, put those down too. It can be turquoise or aqua. It doesn't have to be one of 7 colors. Are we making any headway here, BL?
Yeah, just give me a second. I had to copy it.
Oh, you take your time.
Yeah, I'm
And
ready to put it in now. So
okay, excellent. And if you already have the 7 rays with their esoteric colors, now colors is very complex. I've been writing for 30 years on the complexity of color, but it doesn't need to be overwhelming if you just go by sort of this simple but standard color chart. And yes, there are variations of these charts out there. Use whatever one you want, but try to put a color in that previous, and BL, I'm going to have you also put the 7 rays in their colors in the chat, but only those 2, that's all. And take your time. So going back.
Okay, I need you to go back to the 7 ray colors, please,
Okay,
so I can capture screenshot.
absolutely. Yep, not a
Okay.
problem.
Okay, I got this. Oops, wait a minute. All right, I got the screen capture. Hold on a minute here before you go on. We got
Yes.
a couple of comments here. Diana says, what if we were to apply the antagonistic color to the integrated personality color with the objective of having the effect of expelling an imbalance in health and replacing it with healthy substance?
Yes, that's an important statement, and I would say yes. But with this caveat, if you're, do you remember, Diane, when I presented those 2 Davic ladies that about 6 months ago? And you clearly made the statement, I really like the blue one, but I don't like the red one. And that to me was an insight or a tip off. And there's no right or wrong to this. There's just always a bigger and bolder comprehension of who we are, what our rays are, and how we want to expand that format. If we have a second ray soul or a second ray personality, yes, you're going to gravitate to second ray activities, interests, dynamics, but peripherally, you should be taking into consideration that the 1357, which is the 1 red, 3 green, 5 fiery orange or blue, and 7 violet. You should be bringing those into your auric field gently. And yes, there will be some potential discomfort at first. And the reason for that, Diane, is because the devas that operate through your personality, even when it becomes transmutated, is not going to be exactly on the same level as the solar angel and its potency or Shambhala. So you got to do it with a certain amount of loving tenderness. Isn't that a phrase to remember? You're allowing this burning sensation, which is driving out the dross so that more second ray can come in, not just first ray, but all of the rays. Yeah, it's a paradox, but I hope this has been some help, because that's a very deep question that you have. My suggestion is experiment slowly, methodically, and keep a little journal how this affects you. So from week to week or month to month, you'll notice differences. Because if you got a lot of second ray and you're moving into a first ray field, this is the moment of opportunity. It's good, but it will bring some temporary and transient discomfort. Okay, so now we're jumping back to the 7 rays and
Okay,
keeping, go ahead.
sorry. I did post both of those and Rose helped, but Megan says it feels aligned. My understanding is that the colors that are in the AAB books for your ray have changed now. For instance, if you have yellow, it used to be ray 3 and now it's ray 4. Could you speak on that?
Megan, what is your last name? Just to see if I can place.
Warpy.
Okay, excellent. This is a very profound question, and it's actually one that Michael Robbins and myself and Nicholas Neiman debated. I guess that's the best word for, I would say, about 6 months. And they were of the opinion, and they may be correct, and in certain respects they were correct, that the third ray is really yellow. And according to DK, the third ray in the majority of instances, he says, is green. But you always have to understand the context in which DK is applying this information. The third ray being yellow is from the first solar system, where there were certain high initiates according to their level of development. We might not say they're high initiates now, because there's a different program here in a second ray solar system, whereas in the first solar system it was more third ray, more active intelligence. To go through initiation, you had to master matter. Here in this incarnation, you not only have to get a grip and control of matter, you have to bring it into the field of unconditional love. So there are places where DK says that ray 3 relates to active intelligence, but after, again, 6 months, both Nicholas and Michael could see that it's about context, and that I was basically right, not because I knew more than they did, but because this is what Blavatsky and Bailey and a lot of other pundits and masters and people that are way beyond my pay grade. So that's excellent. That is an excellent question. And that's why I preface this, Megan, with, I'm going to give you a very simple interpretation. But Megan, feel free to get me directly through email, and I'll share other charts with you that are more expanded. And they will come up in this group. It's just that I don't want to overwhelm anybody with too much minutia, which I may have already done. Okay, any additional comments before we go on to the... So what you're going to do, let me just make this last concluding statement. Get my trusty pointer here. You're going to put beside these 6 principles a number of what you think your ray is. And then you're going to come up here, and where the monad is, you're going to say, oh, okay, I think I have a first ray monad. So you're going to put the color red. That's why we have to have BL put the chart in. Oh, I have a soul. That's going to go in the second ring. The third ring is my personality ray, then my mental ray, my astral ray, and my physical etheric ray. So what we're going to have is like a kaleidoscope circular graph of the energies with which you work. And then later, we're going to show how a revolving, rotating, or fourth dimensional chart can give you a even much more powerful sense of what you're moving towards. And this is not to say everyone in this group hasn't already done this preliminary work, but it's foundational for how we could possibly expand it later. So that's going to be your homework, and don't feel obligated to do it. Nobody sits in the corner if they don't comply. It's just your opportunity to look at yourself differently. Okay.
All right, we do have a couple of more comments.
Okay, let's do the comments.
Diana says, in this context, what if we do group work to heal a nation?
Well, yes. And when we do our little meditations, and these little meditations are going to get longer, they're going to evolve. It's the opportunity, and I usually mention this for everybody in the group, to pass these energies through their personal vehicles. connect in on soul levels, and then send it out into the world where there's troubled areas of distress. And if I fail to do that, please somebody remind me, because this is something I take for granted. And then, of course, building in the planetary etheric body of golden triangles. Yes, that's very important. And I have been, okay.
And
Let's,
then we have a
okay,
hand, but let me finish the chat comments first, okay?
yes,
Helio Soul says, how about a coloring session of this template by intuition? And then she says, and some time later do it again and see what changed using the colors on your chart that you just gave us. Um,
that's an
and
excellent.
and also she says, just explain in depth how to use this template.
Yeah, once the template is done, I will show how to use it. That'll be another presentation. And you won't be disappointed with your patients, Helios. And yes, what you're doing is you're creating a journal of your journey through symbols. You're creating an architectural guide, sort of like a roadmap to higher and higher dimensions. And not to be redundant, but we just read where DK said, we can't give this information out, but it will come in the new churches, in the new Masonic work. And in a way, you could say that a lot of what we're sharing here is the basis of the new world religion and churches, because it works so much with the second ray, the fourth ray, the sixth ray, and the seventh ray. And it actually works with all the rays. Okay, excellent. Let's continue.
We still have a hand.
Okay, let's do that. That's good.
Please go ahead, Heidi.
You're on, Heidi.
Oh, I have to unmute her. I'm sorry. I forgot about uh, there we go, Heidi. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. I just wanted to add two things. For me, part of what you're talking about is an invitation into a creative process. And that creative process is about really being able to transform matter into a higher frequency, which is spiritual, and the spiritual into a different shape and form and vibration as it's moving through these spheres that you're talking about. And the beauty of it is that when we come together in a group, it allows for an upliftment, you could say, of what is no longer viable, and then a renewing to part of life that needs to continue. So I just wanted to add those things about the creative force that is presenting itself actually, and I would actually say the church is a temple, and that temple is made out of light, and it spins in space. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Church equals light. That's very, very beautifully shared, Heidi. And I agree, that's what's happening. And we're all building this artifice brick by brick. And that's what creates stability on the lower end and ascension and elevation on the upper end. And so even though we're going over sometimes the same material, it's important to get that really, really solid foundation. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide with my trusty pointer. Okay, now this is the same identical picture that you just saw laid out sort of flat. All I did is curl it around, like taking a apple skin that's laid flat and putting it back to its original shape. And so when we talk about the rays and we talk about color, we will eventually get into not just the 7 rays and how the colors can change, but mutated colors, colors from the first solar system, uh, distorted colors. Some colors come down and they hit the astral plane and they flip and they become another color. And then not last is we're going to rotate it. So where are your 7 rays now? Your 7 rays and your 7 subplanes. Where are your triangles? They're all there. This is the same identical image that we saw the 2 prior to this. But this, which the average person would look at it, average spiritual person, and they might say, yeah, oh, I like it. I like the colors. And that's good. But the esotericist looks at this and says, whoa, the 7 rays, when they're in motion, and they are in motion, these vortices, and that's why I'm always emphasizing going from the triangle to the vortex, they're in motion, and you can see they're like a funnel, and there are different levels to it. And the rays circle down, and then they go to the outer periphery, and they circle back up. And we're going to, and then, of course, here's the last one. This is what I call, this is the synthesis of the cosmic blender. And DK says all the 7 rays eventually fuse into the monadic ray. Yes, people argue, well, you have a monadic ray, but compared to us down here, it's a true synthesis where all the rays are expressed into one fundamental entity. Not easy to discern through the lower mind, but easy to receive through the intuition. Now we're going to go again back into the rays and planes. Imagine this upper one is ray 1 and the
Wayne,
lower. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You
No,
have a question from Jessica. What
okay.
does it mean, the opposite section on your little flat graph that we've sent to people for them to work with? In other words, the opposite of the sun.
The what sign?
Opposite,
The
if you go
opposite.
back to the, if you go
Okay.
back to the
We're
graph.
talking about the rays and planes?
No, we're
Okay.
talking about the 6-fold ray chart, and it says the sun sign, opposite sun, and then rising.
That
So it
will
actually
be,
says opposite sun in there, Jessica.
yes. I'm going to let you explain that, BL, because we've done your chart.
Yes, I know. I was looking to see if I had it on my laptop so I could show people because Duane I mean, I gave him the colors. I figured out what you know, what my current ray chart is for me. I gave him the colors and he swirled it. But yeah, astrologically, we have the sun sign and then we have the sign opposite the sun. Okay, now that's going to be the earth, the way that we do astrology, but it's also, according to DK, an indication of the monad. And so that's why we work with that astrologically. So,
Once we get the rays determined, then that is the next phase we will go into. I'm trying to do this sequentially, and it's not easy. With a lot of third ray, I have a tendency to jump around. Okay, so here you have 2 toruses or spheres with an inlet and an outlet, and they're rotating. And I want you to see this in motion, because this is where you really pick up intuitively I think that was on loop. Anyway, what's interesting about this is that if you watch the red slashes as they come out from the top, they circulate and then they go down behind and they change into the blue, which reverses itself but picks up that, and then it goes through its little evolution. And if you look at my pointer, this shaft is Shambhala. It is the will of the Father. It is what DK called the principle of directed purpose that causes all the substance in the lower levels or dimensions to take shape and to become alive. And again, the consciousness aspect is the result of pure spirit impacting pure matter. Okay, let's look at one more and then we'll have open up for some questions. In the whirling of the force through the vortex, which whirling forms the petal of the lotus, it will be observed that certain petals predominantly stand out. Okay, so we're going to see an animation now, and this explains how two energies or forces, and I'm using the rays and the planes because they're polar opposites, when they come together, they don't cancel each other out. Like a weather system that we shared earlier, they turn upon themselves. And you're going to see geometry that is breathtaking because it explains how it requires two different energies to create a third entity. The rays in their purest aspect, or the planes in their purest aspect, are abstract. They're in pralaya. But when the will of the Father demands recognition or the creation of something, these energies come down, they intermingle, and they create the most exquisite forms. So what you're seeing here in the very center, if you see my pointer, is that always when two energies come together, they create friction, and friction creates a vacuum, and a vacuum sucks energy from the next higher level if the focus is there, or if it's on a lower level, energy from there. The vortex creates the vacuum creates movement between vortices and spheres. Okay, use this as a meditation. we've been taught in quantum mechanics theories that matter is not solid, it's a vacuum, and that consciousness is everywhere. And they can prove it by different studies, as you all know. Well, this is just a higher correlation of that your bodies, you have thoughts, you have feelings and desires, and they're one thing when you're living in a personality, but as you escape the rings pass not of your personality prison, you begin to reach out and realize that there's infinite types of energies passing and crossing back and forth, doing these exquisite dances. And some will argue, oh, you're destroying the basis of the occult teachings with all these fancy animations. But the funny thing is, it's just the opposite. It's an attempt to take very intelligent people like yourself who are having experiences along these lines, if you haven't already had them in earlier incarnations, and bringing it out into visibility. And however inadequately I do that, you're looking at aspects of yourself here. This is not something I created. This is actually something that I got from some scientific blog. And it was an attempt to show what the dynamic is when two energies going in opposite directions manifest. They can't cancel each other out. And you'll notice, and let's just start this for a second again. This is a side view. It looks linear, but it's actually, now notice in the center, those little dots shooting back and forth, those are electrical discharges from the positive and negative, trying to balance each other, trying to bring complete unity, but it can't. And it's not a failure, it's the creation of a totally new system between spirit and matter. And the music is perfect for this. It's called something of the gods. Rose would remember. Here's your first ray. There's your fourth ray, third ray green, fifth ray violet. Yeah, no, these you can explore with these. You can explore with these if you go into Makara, get the link. If you don't have it, through the University of Seven Rays, the Moya School, and just study these because they reveal mountainous information and insight that I have superficially dealt with. And the reason for that is because it'll play upon your intuition. It'll play upon your psychic sensitivity. Okay, I'm going to skip this quote by DK and move along here. And this is from Raised in the Initiations, Volume 5. I think it was the last book that of the series that Alice wrote of DK's teachings. Notice to the left, now I've extrapolated on this a little bit and added a few things, but what I didn't add is the general diagram. Notice that rather than the tabulations that he has used throughout all of his works as like dinner plates. Okay, this is the Atmic plane. This is the Buddhic plane. They're all like plates stacked one upon the other. Or astrologically, this are conical shells. And can you see why the flower or the lotus or the rose is always heralded as such a powerful metaphor for the spiritual? Because one tier of the flower petals comes out in brilliance and then it fades away, but out of the throat comes another tier of petals. Then out of that throat, another tier of petals. The vortex is the only thing that can explain these apparent disconnects or inconsistencies that I have found in the ageless wisdom teachings. And it's not because of anything deliberate, it's because the teachings were given out with the resources they had. If Alice Bailey was a highly technical person in science or an artist, we could have had all kinds of additional stuff. And I say this with no criticism because she gave her entire life to this work. Okay, here's another visual image. We've seen this before. The little black dot is Fohat, and Fohat is cosmic electricity. It's hidden, it's unknown, it's pure energy. It's like a black hole. And as it does its dance, as it drills holes in space, to quote HPB, or drills its way down into matter, it has a spin-off like a fractal every single level, every plane, every subplane. And what we see here, and here's the 7 rays right here, listed at the bottom. This is predominantly a second ray spiral, but you can see it's impelled from the first ray by the red. Okay, let's just take one of the arms. If you take one small section of that, like a fractal or a hologram, you see it's just an infinite reproduction of itself. And to quote the Tibetan, it's an infinity of multiples of 7, and there's no end, because there's no end to consciousness and to spirit and all these higher dimensions. This is a beautiful quote right here, where the Tibetan, in one of the formulas, this is for group initiation. This isn't just for individual use. And we can use these symbols in a group format later. All we're doing is laying down the foundational teachings, but they're not foundational teachings. They allude to the foundational teachings of the next higher level of teachings. And I realize that's sort of a large claim, but I will let all of you be the judges, because either you're vibrating to what you are, or it's slowly emerging, and it's not for me to in any way evaluate or judge. Anyway, Formula 3, preserved as sounds of trumpeted words. Now, isn't that a curious phrase? Formula 3 is preserved as sounds of trumpeted words. Well, here's your vortex again. And what comes out of the throat of the vortex? The next higher level. And the quotation is, the old and outworn presentations were the product of the concrete mind and are therefore crystallizing in their effects and distorting in their results. The new approach, which I seek to indicate, makes its appeal to the abstract mind and to the soul, whose values are sound, and eventually to the intuition. Here's another one. He's talking about during the moment of death, or also the door of initiation, which is a type of death. That center is in reality an opening, a door leading somewhere, a way of escape, a place through which the soul imprisoned in the body can emerge and pass into higher states of consciousness. It has also been called, I love this, the funnel or channel for the sound. It has also been named the trumpet through which the escaping AUM can pass. And you can interchange the AUM with OM. And we've discussed the difference between those two quite a bit. Now, here's a very powerful quote by the Tibetan. A mantram, when rightly sounded forth, creates a vacuum in matter, resembling a funnel. This funnel formed betwixt the one who sounds it forth and the one who is reached by the sound. One, it links him and aligns him with his higher self or ego. It puts him in contact with his master. It links him with his egoic group and binds all one into one composite whole, vibrating to one note. That would be, of course, the note of the group, even though we may have individual soul notes or personality notes. The note of the group is more powerful. Now, here's okay, this seems to be clipped slightly. It just says the 7 ray lords seen as a composite of 7 flowering trumpets. This is the 7 rays when they're in their spherical form and not in their linear form. Now, isn't that, I did not create this one either. Isn't that one of the most beautiful images you've seen of the soul on its own plane, of all these higher energies, all these 7 rays? Each one is independent. Each one expresses a different quality, but they're all brought together. They're all ensouled by this magnificent circular rings past knot. Okay, now I'm going to freak everybody out because I'm going to bring this idea of the vortex right down to a very granular level. We have to understand that white and black magic are really, to people who've taken the higher degrees, they're countercurrents. And this is a glamorized version of the white magician over here, or sorceress, to the left, bringing down from her, notice she has a pointed hat. Could that be a symbol of the vortex? She's drawing energy from the white brotherhood as she does her magic. And then on the right, you have from the, forgotten the movie this was in, the, anyway.
Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz. Thank you. You know, the dark witch who's always trying to screw everything up. She also has a hat with a vortex at the top, only it's black, and she draws her powers from the elemental forces from down below. And then, so you can see, even in contemporary terms, some of these ideas are leaking through. And just to wind up this session, and then we're going to open it up for a few questions if we have time. Here is, we're contrasting 2 different images. The one on the left is obviously with all that head center activity, the pineal, the pituitary, the ulta major, the crown center, all lit up, that this person is going through the 3rd initiation. The other person, DK might call this person who's sitting over there feeling very rejected and with the dunce hat on, DK might call a bud ego, or perhaps an ego with only a few of the egoic lotus petals stimulated. And again, this is no criticism, because the work is to go from the right to the left. And I see in the background, he's been probably forced to write do good, or I'm a good boy, or something, because he was cutting up, and this is his payment. This is how they were, often children were treated back then, not with love and compassion, that they're an early bud ego and they have personality challenges and disorders. But there's the full sway, the panoramas, from coming up to an initiation and then having gone through initiation. Okay, and then the last one, and we're going to open it for questions. How many remember was it the Sorcerer's Apprentice this came out of? And Mickey Mouse with his magic hat on. Now, what does Mickey have on top of his hat? Well, the hat is blue. What does that say? He has a couple of golden stars. The vortex is the passage to the stars. It's a conical shell on both ends. And when it comes down over the head centers in causal connections, this is when the higher initiations take place. Now here in this silly little thing with Mickey Mouse, I do recall, and I may not have this correct, that he was given instructions to clean up or wash floors, and being a neophyte, he thought he could circumvent the master or whoever was instructing him, and he would use his powers to get these brooms to do all his dirty work. And again, I apologize as if this is an oversimplification, but as the sorcerer's apprentice moves through the story, they get out of control. And that's why DK says you really shouldn't be working with the Devas or the elementals until you've got a degree of personality integration and purification. And I have no doubt that this is what has taken place with this group here. So this is another example of maybe how an esoteric truth is slowly working its way out onto the mainland, onto the basic exterior world. Okay, so how are we doing for time?
Well, we have plenty of time because we were supposed to start at 11 our time. So
Okay,
we have
excellent.
about 45 minutes, but we have a number of comments, and Rose has
Okay,
patiently had her hand up for a long time. Go
Thank
ahead,
you,
please,
Rose. You're
Rose.
the best. Okie dokie.
Well, I wanted to make some comments several slides ago, so now I just have even more comments to make.
Oh,
So
I can spin back now
if
that
you
I've
have,
learned to master this little wand here.
we'll go in reverse order. So
Yeah, you tell me when to stop.
okay. Well, with this, no, you can stay. Yeah, stay right here, or go back to the cone hat one. I remember, and you may have shared this with me, Duane, that the dunce hat on the school child's head came from the legend that the sorcerer, like the witch, has the hat because it would give them more intellectual power. So the dunce hat on the child was supposed to give them more intellectual power. Now, where it actually came from, like, I know the school wasn't using it in that way, but and so there's this legend that goes way, way back, like you're saying, that this coned hat is like the vortex in a material form, and it draws down energy from the higher level right into the physical. So it's very interesting, that, and I wonder if not people saw that etherically when perhaps people were doing some sort of magic work or something. So now we'll go back another slide to when you were showing that trumpeted funnel. One more. This one is just so provocative and profound when you really look at this image. Well, actually, there was a different one, Duane. There's one more. It's but it's very similar to this one. Yes, this one right here. It's like when I look at this, the funnel, this is like a vortex of between the different planes. So that opening is your door between the different dimensions, the different planes, and it's also the opening for which causes the manifestation of objective reality. So you go from the 0 point, from the unmanifested, through this creative process of sound invocation that creates the entire universe, the entire manifested reality, and then you have the expression into the different colors, which are the diversity that we know of. So go back one more or two more to the rotating, that still image of the rotating, keep going. One more. One more. You went a long way.
The one more lady. Okay. I love it. Okay.
One more.
Is it an animation?
It's the still image of that animation. This one right here.
Okay.
This, and you will have to clarify for me with this. Is this so what this for me really is representing is we are these electrical beings and everything has polarity. Everything has positive and negative. And whether it's our cell of our body, our physical body, or the entire universe or a solar system. And this is representing how that interplay of those two polarities creates the manifestation. And when you are playing this, we were just talking about the opposite sign of your astrological sign. So when I was looking at this, my question is your opposite sign, so if you have your sun sign, let's call that the top, and the opposite sign is the bottom. I had not thought of it that way as being the opposite polarity that draws the forces from the one sphere, whether that's so in my case, I'm an Aries sun. Is that somehow manifested or activated because of the opposite being Libra? I'm not an astrologer, so, but this represented that to me. So if you could add some clarity on that, then I'm done. Thank you.
Well, I think that you explained your insights very well. And all I'm presenting here is some general insights and ideas. The actual images, the symbols, and the animations just take it to a whole new level. And there are many of you out there that are getting very powerful influx of energy from being a part of this group, but you may not necessarily feel the need or are prompted to share. And that's fine, because you're going to take away, HPB said there's 7 levels to every symbol. And you will take from it where you're situated on the spiritual path. How else could it be? Now, yes, there'll be a prompting to go into the next higher department, the next higher level. And what you shared, Rose, was original, unique to me, and I really appreciate it. As many of you in the group have shared, I get many insights. And if you hear me say just the same thing you just said, that's proof of it. So thank you. Thank you, Rose. Okay, any other comments? Keep in mind, these are all available for your use.
Okay, we have a whole bunch of comments, so let me get to them. Joe, I see your hand, but let me get to some of the comments first. And I just would like to say, as an astrologer to Rose, that it's a totally different perspective what Duane has presented here with the vortices and with the torus there, and how that works in relation to the opposites. But yes, our task as evolving human beings is to take those 12 polarities within our astrological chart and balance each one of them so that we work from the center, not from the extremes of either one. What is it they say for Libra? The razor sharp, narrow path between the two, and basically you could actually take the whole chart, and the 12, you balance them, they become the 6. And then you also, in doing so, you're working on the crosses that need to be worked out. And then basically you end up working, when you have enough soul control, you end up working from the central hub of the chart, where you can go to any of the energies that you need for a specific purpose. but you're not using the negative side of them, you're using the positive um, from the hub. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. This idea of going to the opposite side of the hub is really the foundation of initiation. We're living in a very material world with three lower bodies that are very materially orientated, and we have to shift that. And direction and the movement of energy is very, very important. You really don't get a lot of this in the Bailey books till you get to Treatise in Cosmic Fire. And then you get into the three types of motion: rotary, which relates to the material plane, something just revolving around in a circle; spiral cyclic. Okay, imagine imagine a planet revolving just perfectly around a circle. Okay, then you add the consciousness aspect, which is the spiral cyclic. Then it becomes the vortex, and it becomes multi-dimensional. And then last but not least, you have progressive motion, which is the shortest distance between two places. But on another level, it's the know nothing. It's the point, and there's no movement at all because it's pure pralaya. But uh, motion is very, very important, because not only is motion important, revolving and spinning and spiraling, but we have to understand that the soul on its own plane palpitates. It palpitates to the heart throb of the solar logos to some degree, stepped down, of course, by our planetary logos. And we know that, and this is what animation can do. It can bring us, at least visually, a little closer. Yes, granted, when all the veils drop, all the symbols disappear, but there are grades and types of symbols, and they can relate to the rays, the planes, initiations, astrological inclinations. Yeah. So, any other comments?
Oh yeah, way lots of them. Okay, Heidi says, and I believe she typed this when you were showing that second video, the vacuum vortex. Anyway, she says, beautiful creation and artistry. It's appreciated through the living breath that is flowing through all that is presenting itself.
Living breath. Well, that is saying it all in a few words. And in Raja Yoga, they prepare the student by going through all these different stages. But one of the last stages, and this is particularly important at the third initiation, and that is that you have to give up the individual breath or life. Now, that doesn't mean you have to physically die. You have to give the individual breathing for a higher atmosphere, for the cosmic breath. And when you get into deep meditation, as you all know, you'll find your breathing will slow down. And there are times when it becomes imperceptible. And there are yogis, and I'm not saying this is like some great challenge we're supposed to be achieving, but they can actually stop for great lengths of time, even breathing, because they enter into samadhi. And we have to learn to give up the lesser for the greater, and learn that even that is a misnomer, because according to the Tibetan, you don't give up. That's a glamour, that's an illusion perpetuated by good intentioned people who are trying to get to a higher level. DK says you don't give up. You take over the new, the creative, the beautiful, the truthful, the blissful, the awe. And what happens to the lesser breath? What happens to all those lesser interests? You don't beat them into submission. That's what basic psychology will teach you. they die of attrition because your attention is off of them. And that's the beauty of the breath. When you learn to do mantras correctly, and that's coming, and you learn proper breathing, and it's not a blanket thing. Different people require different orientation. You will open yourself to the breath of the Father, the will, the monad. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Heidi, you always
Okay.
say so much with so few words.
There's, you asked about the music. Maria says it was Annette Cantor music, she thinks, and Rose said Garden of the Gods.
Yes, I highly recommend that album. It is just, it's a cross between just pure human voice control and Davic and angelic beings that have entered into that person. And it's not coming from them, it's coming through them. Therefore, it has a universal application. When you sound a mantra with the heart open and the will directed and the mind empty, at least the lower mind empty, you are populating and fertilizing the whole entire planet. And that's what our responsibility is right now. Not just our individual growth, but to take what we know, what we've achieved, and to share it through advanced meditations. And I know all of you do through other groups. Okay, any more comments?
Lots, lots, lots. I'll get to you in a minute, Joe, okay? Francis says, oh, wait a minute. Rose posted the image from Raisin Initiation of the funnel that you had there on your slide. So thank
Yep.
you, Rose. Francis says, do any of these reflect the Fibonacci sequence?
Absolutely.
And I think the shell one. Yeah.
Yes, all divine geometry is based on certain mathematical ratios, the golden mean, and there's just lots of them. And this is true of music too. A visual image is frozen music. It's been stepped down to the point where we can observe it as something tangible. But how tangible is a note coming out of a beautiful symphony? It's like quantum mechanics. It's there, but it's not there. And it's lost in a deluge of other exquisite sounds. It's like an ocean moving through you rather than something that you're meditating on. You're opening and going with the flow. Thank you, Francis. Any additional comments?
Oh, yeah, lots. Diana says it must always be remembered that imagination is the seed of intuition because one cannot imagine what does not exist somewhere in our seemingly complex planetary system. And she says that's from Dinah too.
Excellent. Yes. And DK lists the teachings for which he was responsible to communicate to humanity. And at the very top of it is the teachings on the will of our planetary logos. That was his primary attempt to enlighten humanity. And then listed second is the new discipleship training, which includes the new teachings, the new uses of the imagination. And when you get into really esoteric work with other systems like Hindu and Buddhism and Sufism, Taoism, just to name a few, they all require a keen and highly tuned and focused imagination because there's a bridge between our brains, our etheric body, and these higher entities. And the imagination is what creates the vortex, what keeps it spinning. The ability to, without straining, visualize all these component parts as one unbroken Antakarana bridge. The Antakarana is a vortex. And that will be taught in the new esoteric schools. Okay, any additional comments? Thank you, Diane. That was excellent.
Yes, let me see. I'll get to yours in just a second, Rose, on the funnel, but Diana says doubt in the DPC chart, you know, the little flat one that you had me put in for everybody. She says, is it incorrect to consider that the monadic ray equals the ray opposite the sun, and that the soul ray equals the ray of the rising sign? As an astrologer, I have to tell you no. DK says no. He says that looking at the rising sign, it won't tell you your soul ray, it will hint at it. And the same thing is true with the monadic ray. So it gives us hints, but it doesn't flat out say, oh, my rising sign is Gemini, therefore my soul ray must be ray 2 or ray 6. There's other subtle factors in there that are part of the play. So I just wanted to say that. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about that, Duane?
I think you covered it beautifully, other than the rising sign is what you're moving towards. And as BL has eloquently shared, it can be multiple things. It can be multiple rays. And that's why she's giving good advice not to be too rigid.
Rose says, and you're coming up next, Joe, okay? Rose says the funnel becomes the teleportal between dimensions and from the unmanifested to the manifested.
Absolutely. Who's that gentleman, Gamble, who Thrive? Is anyone familiar with that? It's a wonderful series of presentations on the new Aquarian age we're moving into on many different levels, and he showcases the vortex all through all of his different things. Any other
Okay,
hands
Joe,
up?
you want to go ahead?
I've been playing with my imagination, but let's start here on Earth. I know because of a meditation this morning that we're within about 95 hours of the next full moon, which is at 25 degrees Aquarius and 25 Leo. These are significant points. I also can tell you that at the cusp between Virgo and Libra, from about 5 degrees either side of that cusp, we have the largest, I believe, black hole in our awareness. That is humanity's awareness, and one of which we've had a composite picture made a year or two ago. I found myself out there this morning with a blank in a way, and listening to this concept of the trumpet. It's as though you're sitting at that point in the trumpet mouth, and you're aware that the energies will run from that point as far out into the cosmos to the one, I guess, from the 7, and reverse it. We come down to Earth and into the core of the Earth and atomic matter itself, as we come from the 7 back down all the way through the planes and rays, particularly for me, they're rays that end up in the etheric realm. I think that's all I can say, but this presentation and the comments for me have all been a symphony of remarks that bring it together. And I guess I go back to the point that within 95 hours, we have an input from the cosmos and from the hierarchy that I think is very important for the chaos that we're experiencing on the globe today.
So true. Thank you, Joe. That's excellent. That is so true. And we know there's a black hole in the center of this, in the center of our solar system. No, not our solar system, the greater system. Isn't it Sagittarius A is a black hole? And we align with that periodically as we go through these different cycles astrologically. Anyway, yeah, a black hole is not absent of anything. In fact, it's so full. The Tibetan Buddhists speak in terms that are very hard to understand: the unborn, the uncreated, the know nothing. Well, how can you, if you're a average spiritual person, how can you hang on to those kind of concepts? You can't. You have to be trained. You have to have built through the lower levels and seen what they are, and even with the teachings, what they are not. And when Joe, you start talking about music, to me, that's when the higher mind and the intuition are awakening. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments?
Yes, Asha said she thinks the guy was Foster Gamble. And
Foster
then
Gamble,
Vivian
very good.
says she
Thank you.
thinks it's Procter Gamble. And isn't
Yes.
Procter and Gamble a company?
Yeah, yeah. One was the son of the elderly Gamble.
Okay. Chaos is an agent of change, is what Asha says.
Yes. Creative, controlled chaos may not always be possible, but you can define how much you want to push yourself. And there's no need to be heroic. And that's a science, to know how much progress you can make and how it affects the stability of your personality and where you're at. And every one of us is different. And so when you get involved in group work, if people are trying to push you, you know it's not your group. And they should create space. People should create an openness in the availability of energies that anyone, whenever they're ready, can tap into. But it's never forced on people. Any additional comments?
Francis says a black hole, the void, everything and nothing.
Yes. Everything and nothing. I love those paradoxical terms. We're trained to find meaning in everything. It's a survival thing. It's the lower part of the concrete brain. And it's obviously a virtue because we have to live in the material world. But the art is when and how, the knowledge to know how to let it go when it's no longer needed. And as DK says, the mind is a beautiful thing, even the lower mind. And it's not incorrect it's not correct to say that the lower mind is the slayer of the real, which is a ancient cliche. It's the undisciplined, the undirected lower mind that slays the real. You need your lower mind to think, to make decisions, to build this structure as high as you can with your lower mind. And when you can see it only goes so far, you begin to switch gears and you start to use the higher mind and then the intuition. Then you're flying freely. And when you come back, you got someplace to land. And that's the difference between the occult path of the West and many of those in the East. They're a lot of very advanced and great people, but they've often left their personal equipment behind because they saw the equipment was just an illusion. But the question is, can you use what was an illusion to you to help other people who are caught in the illusion? Like they say with the Buddha, he didn't just die, he bequeathed his vestments. And what would those vestments be? The highest aspect of the astral plane that he worked with, the highest aspect of the mental plane that he worked with, and his Buddhic sheath, and possibly even his Atmic sheath. He bequeathed them to his higher students who stepped it down so that the work could continue. And believe it or not, we because of this dynamic can be here now ruminating around these austere and profound mysteries. Somebody was there. I feel it from Michael Robbins all the time. We were so tight, not just on a personal level, but on many, many other levels. And he's visibly off the plane, but psychically, mentally, and spiritually, he's still seeding. And you can feel his influence in a lot of what I say because in many ways he was my mentor and still is. Okay, any questions, any final comments before we go on just a little further?
Yeah, we have a couple of comments, but I just wanted to say thank you for pointing that out about Michael Robbins. One of the things that DK talked about when he talked about his disciples was people who had passed over were still working with the group on the inner side.
Oh, yes.
And I feel the same thing with Michael, and don't start me crying.
Well, that
Uh,
means you get it.
Yes, because I do feel him, and I
Yeah.
do believe we've all been here working together in this format before. So anyway, Cecily says, "Thank you, Duane. Yes, the illusion vehicle can be directed as a world server."
Yes, that is so true. A world server. What we would discard can be manna from heaven to other people who are trapped and are prisoners of the planet. And that's what DK meant when he said in the future, and he said this back in the 40s, these psychic abilities that are looked upon as so dangerous and so full of terror and fear, he said, will one day be developed into great assets of service. The ability to know your brother's thoughts or your sister's problems or thinking. Because I'll tell you, most people don't want to share where they're at because they don't feel it's going to be of any value. But when they're in the auric field of somebody who dispenses and distributes love, that fear dissipates and then they share. And between what that advanced student can telepathically pick up and what that student who's coming along behind them needs, you have a meeting. And this is the purpose of service, to refine our abilities to communicate and new and higher forms of service. Baking pies for the Rotary may have been a good start in past lifetimes or incarnations, but this time around, more is demanded of you. And you have it. It's there. It's there. You wouldn't be a part of this group, if I may be so pretentious, if there weren't new avenues of research, growth, and service coming individually and as a group. Any other hands up?
We have one more comment so far. Helioso says, "The anime with the two Tauruses and the streaming cosmic electric currents was presented to my mind as creation of Earth, and earthly plane, like a building process is the central plane, the one upon we are residing, so to speak, and colors of those electric currents are still evolving, dragging us with them into evolutionary processes. And that is why evolution is inevitable. It is superseding our human minds and whims.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is poetic and occultly perfect. I am reminded of the quote, I think it was Voltaire who said, "Life will pursue her experiments way beyond the limitations of our judgment." And this is because when the soul begins to pour down through the vehicles, all the things that we thought we had to do personally to make it happen disappear, and the soul takes over. And now, yes, you still have a personality, but to quote the Tibetan, it takes its rightful place. It's not the personality that causes the problem, it's inability in the early stages of development to take its rightful place. For all of you mothers and fathers out there, would you really, when your little toddlers were running around at 3, 4, 5, and 6, would you let them take over and be subservient to them? No. In a loving, dynamic way, you guided them and you gave them instructions of how they're going to get through this crazy thing called life. And we all need tutors, and we have the masters. These this hero worship is a thing of the past. And yes, aspirants and probationers will probably always need some strong personality to lean on, but the true esotericist leans on the truth. Is this group, is this person, are they speaking? Uh, is it truth? Because you've been through enough, you've tested so many other dynamics, and yes, there's many ways you can participate in the ageless wisdom teachings, but I think what we're doing here is breaking new ground, and it's a joy, it's a privilege. Okay, any additional comments? We can go a few more slides if we can
Yes,
go.
Heliosos says, it's a great reminder to myself in such intense times, which came through this amazing work from the higher teachers. Amazing.
That's it.
Pranam.
If you're not in awe or it's not amazing to you, and I don't say this with any sense of criticism, you may not be getting as much as you could if you shift your view of things slightly. But again, that's not for me to determine about others, but it's an option we all have every day of our lives. Okay, we're going to move on to a few more
Um,
animations.
Hi,
Okay,
I just have a couple of comments. What you
okay.
just said reminds me of the battlefield of Arjuna. Isn't that exactly what he had to do? He had to
Yes,
shift his perspective to see that he was fighting both sides of the same
right.
family. So he had to do that. And the other thing I want to say is, um, although I did not appreciate it when I was a teenager, my mother was metaphysical. And one of the things that I always remember about her is she would walk through the house and she'd mutter under her breath, "Dear Lord, let me find the lesson in this so I can move on." And so every time she was having a bad day or something, that's where her mind went. Let me find the lesson in this so I can move on.
Yeah, well, she was very wise and she did good by you. Excellent. Thank you, BL. That's beautiful. Okay,
We
I
have
have a
a
few.
new comment from
Okay,
Magda. She says the third logos, uh, imagination, intuition, inspiration, new Jupiter 5, Do, solarized astral, future Venus 6, ray solarized etheric, future Vulcan 7, me, solarized psychic, R. Steiner, Dirgon, Rosicrucian, the Mani way. We are called now to alchemize our astral body, Manus, to enter the new Jupiter by the way to get to the angelic plane.
Excellent.
This SC, sorry, I don't know, little war of small against all, alias getting through a making sacred of our planet and plane, is our Christic evolutionary path. The other way is the Antichrist, transhumanist, one leading to the AVE sphere, hence the 2025 benchmark. You may want to read that yourself, Duane, to respond a little better. Or if you want me to, I can unmute Meg.
Yeah, you do it, BL.
Sorry, I'm having my asthma, bless his pointed head.
Okay.
Go
Would you
ahead,
like me to-
Megda. I've unmuted you if you want to explain this a little bit, please.
Yes, let me reread my comments. Chat. Yes, I'm using Rudolf Steiner, then the Rosicrucian Manichaean from the Mani, the master of the master of the masters, initiators of first, second, and third root races. So anyway, and the third logos, our task here is to develop first imagination to get to new Jupiter, fifth Earth incarnation. As a musical note, the do, the fi. That means that we have to solarize the astral to get to the manas, as the philosophers say. Then we will have to get through to future Venus, number 6, Earth incarnation, which is Ray, which is D, and we'll have to solarize our etheric body. And then we'll get to future Vulcan, number 7, the closure of the 7th cycle of the third logos. And that will be me, E, the solarized physic, not psychic, physic, which means the completion of the solarized, alchemized body of our human body, of our earth body. And we'll have gotten there. So after Vulcan, initiating then the next third logo. So, okay, that will be the major prolaya. So now we are called to alchemize our astral body right now to get to astral body, not body, okay, body. So to get to the manas and entering New Jupiter, so New Jerusalem, Beziehungsweise, so that means to get to angelic planes, we need to become angel by in the astral body. Then we'll need to become archangel and then also archai, okay? Like Jesus Christ, which was, who was the only entity in our, so to say, time to manage to solarize all 3 bodies, which he was the only one that was, that's why Steiner put so much importance on the Golgotha event, because it's right now the only way of full initiation. Buddhism, Oriental practices are all the past. We are over the seventh church of the divine Giovanni. And so we are ending this with a small, so-called small war of all against war. No, I'm sorry, small war of all against all, which we are witnessing every day right now as a divine plan, a divine plan. So finishing with the comments, Um, the other way is the antichristic way, which is being fighting in the elements and in the planes that you study so well. And the one leading to the octave sphere, which beyond that, then we'll get to, all those prophetic things of the fire of Zolfo, and where your karmic story will get halted. So this is right now we have to concentrate and read in this contextual, in this context, the events that we're witnessing in real life. So as someone was saying, to bring down all this because we are facing these Shambhala events. And so we are all here bringing all this down and writing new things, So I think tomorrow there's a new webinar. So I think we are called to follow that too.
Well, thank you. That's excellent. I like
Yeah.
how you're
Yeah.
I like
Please.
how you're relating the planets to the rays and how we must become an angel, this idea of alchemicalizing. That's excellent. Well, thank you so much, Reagan. And musical notes are important. Okay. Any additional comments before we go on?
We do have a few, but we're actually out of time now. So as usual, I will take all the comments and I will post the chat comments so everybody can look at them later. So.
Well, let's use this as a closing meditation. This next animation is very short. And just, if you look at this blue tetrahedron, you have seen formed in the center what is called the star of life. When you arrange triangles in a certain relationship, eventually you come up with the fusion of the upper triad, which is, if you follow my pointer, this vortex going up, and then you have on the lower part of the star of life the vortex going down. In fact, if you look carefully, you'll see this is the logo emblazoned in the Moya school in the very center. It's a what is called a Morgan David glyph, and you see it a lot in the modern Jewish state, but it relates to the perfect fusion of the higher three Atma, Buddhi, Manas with the lower three, which is the etheric, astral, and mental. So everything that we've shared, or everything that I've shared, basically relates to certain overriding symbols that sort of show it all, but they do it differently, and there's less complexity, but there's more understanding of movement. So use this as a meditation, draw it in, take the group energy that it's distributing, the hierarchical use of symbols as they look down through the different levels, and apply it into your personal life, into the group work that you do, and see our planet Earth perfectly balanced between the purified material forces and the spiritual forces that have come to elevate that which still lives in the dark. Okay, so thank you, and we shall begin. Excellent. Would somebody like to enunciate the great invocation for closing? Rose, would you like to lead?
Yes, thank you. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of man, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. So mote it be.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming. We send light and love.